Search the land until the seasons and centuries have passed, until the day a hero named Merit obeyed his task. Deep dark enemy, we love to play video games. We'll keep playing until the early morning. Deep dark enemy, we explain modern games. Deep dark enemy, we sell my games and more. Set off on his quest to who he needed a crew. The navigator joined the ranks and so did Mr. Q. Sailing for adventure, stories and for treasure. We will help you through, so climb aboard and join the crew. Deep dark enemy, we love to play video games. We'll keep playing until the early morning. Deep dark enemy, we explain modern games. Deep dark enemy, we sell the games and more.
Yay.
Ahoy divers, and welcome back to Deep Dive Gaming. We are playing some Monster Hunter World in the background while Hiro and I have a stream of consciousness. Tonight's topic... Oh, hello Hiro. I'll start there.
Hello.
And tonight's topic, we're going to talk about side-scrolling games, then versus now, because Hiro had some interesting stuff to talk about on there that I'd completely forgotten about. Something about the technology going into side scrollers. I think it was something about the technology going into side scrollers these days, or am I completely misremembering?
To be honest, this is an open discussion, so I expect it to go all over the place.
Yeah, true. That is our motif. That is why we named the show the way we did. So,
Oh yeah.
let's see. So side-scrollers. The first side-scroller game I think I got to play that I paid for with my own money was Crash Bandicoot on PlayStation.
Ooh. To be honest, I didn't actually get to buy my own games for a very long time. So I would go with the first side-scroller game that I played was, now I'm thinking, I think it was a Castlevania game on, well, no, I'm not sure. The one that I remember most is Mario.
Yeah,
the original
with
Mario.
you being such a fan of Nintendo, I'm not surprised.
Well, see, because I remember a bunch of them from when I was really young. Like, I played Contra, I played Mario, I played Sonic, all forms of Sonic. I played, let's see, we were talking about various, well, to be fair, there's a lot of games that fall under the side-scroller motif, if you will, genre, if you will, but they're also not exactly just side-scrollers. For example, Streets of Rage, that's a side-scroller. Double Dragon, that's a side-scroller, but they're also beat-em-ups.
Also what?
So they're also beat-em-ups, like,
oh yeah,
not fighting games, but side-scroller beat-em-ups.
yeah.
Ninja Turtles. Like I said, this is going to end up all over the place, I'm sure.
Yep. We only have an hour or two. So hopefully we don't get ourselves into a rabbit hole we can't then dig ourselves out of. Otherwise, the stream is going to end rather abruptly.
I'm sure we could keep it tame.
Yeah.
Um, but in all fairness, I did start off with NES, but I didn't have, or I'd played games before that. There was a
Oh boy.
Castlevania game that was not on the NES. I want to say it was on some other system that I can't remember what it was called. I wasn't sure if it was a Commodore or if it was an Atari, but it was a side scroller. Um, I guess they call it Metroidvania nowadays, but it was it was in the same concept, same play style as Castlevania, where you were moving across sideways across the map and going to different screens and fighting basically Dracula's minions type things.
Mojo says,
So
think
I
Gauntlet was
remember
my
that
first
one
side
too.
scroller outside of Mario and Sonic.
What did she say?
She said Gauntlet was her first side scroller outside of Mario and Sonic. But
Yep, yep, I
Gauntlet
remember
was the
Gauntlet
arcade.
as well. Yeah, but are you going to classify arcades as part of this conversation?
I mean, I don't see why not.
I don't see why not either.
I mean, I think when I picked it, it was a fairly broad topic.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I remember Gauntlet, but I feel like Gauntlet was also more of a beat 'em up than a side scroller.
Okay, so
What do you think, Mojo?
So side scroller in the classic sense are games where, like the original Super Mario Brothers, where you go across the map,
Yep.
jump over things, jump on enemies, collect coins, do all that jazz.
Platformer.
Yeah.
Platformer, yeah. Now, wait a minute. You said your first was
Crash Bandicoot.
but would you really call that a side scroller or more of a platformer? Because
I
that was
guess
more of a 3D platformer to me.
Okay, so yeah, that might be where the distinction is that and this is kind of why I bring you in on these conversations, because you know the differences, whereas I know only the broad terms. Side scroller, I always thought, like, the fact that I'm jumping in Crash Bandicoot, I'm going from one point on the map across, trying to dodge obstacles, dodge things, collect fruit, do all that jazz. I thought that was what a side scroller was. Now you're saying
Well,
platformer.
Yes, I call Crash a 3D platformer because Crash Bandicoot transitioned between side scroller and over the shoulder platforming. So it wasn't just exclusively a side scroller. It did have some side scrolling levels in it. But it also had the levels where you were behind Crash and you were running and jumping over pitfalls because you were being chased by a boulder, if you remember that.
Yeah, definitely.
Excuse me.
Mojo says it was more like, her game was more like a beat 'em up side scroller, had to jump between the forward. In reality, it was
Yep.
Pitfall on Atari.
I remember Pitfall too. Pitfall was frustrating.
Sonic was started as a side scroller and ended up being a 3D platformer as well.
Yeah. Because when you did the bonus levels, you were, again, behind Sonic and jumping over obstacles and going around a tube and stuff. Although, that one didn't really end up being 3D per se, unless you're talking about the future titles.
Sounds like she might be.
That could be. But side scrollers have come a long ways. Like, if you really look at it, I don't feel like they really got into the side, like using the side scrolling function with its, true potential until more recent, console releases. Because if you think about it, well, they kind of got away from side-scrolling aspects when they jumped into the 64 era / PlayStation era, and even the Saturn and the Dreamcast era. They kind of just got away from side-scrolling as a game method, if you will, or a game environmental display. I don't even know how I would really articulate that one. But let's see. Trying to think. There's a lot, and I mean an awful lot, of indie titles that decided to go to the side-scrolling aspect of storytelling recently. In fact, I feel like indie games have really brought on the mass appeal and creativity of using all genres to really tell their story. But of course, like I said, we're talking about side-scrollers. Recently, I can honestly say with confidence that like different franchises like Metroid went all the way back to the roots of the original Metroid era of games, using side scrollers, or using side scroller as a genre. And of course, it's more of a Metroid. Well, it is a Metroidvania because Castlevania and Metroid together, between the two, really brought on the genre of Metroidvania. That's what it's named for, of course. But really, I do enjoy those types of games. For a while, I didn't even think I would like going back to that gameplay style. Anyways, go ahead, Mariner. I'm kind of owning the floor here.
I'm trying to remember, like, I'm from Doom. Because they usually, those two games are usually referred to in the same sentence. Now I'm really getting off the mark because neither of those are side-scrolling games. So, but as far as, like,
Doom?
yeah.
No, Doom is definitely not. Doom is the origin of first-person shooters. Give you that.
Yeah. So, I just can't remember. I don't know. My gaming knowledge is poor, to say the least. Because I just didn't. There were the one or two games that I liked to play, and I only liked to play those games. And so those were the only games I played. So there's this larger gaming world that I didn't know existed until my best friend / brother was introducing me to all these games that he played, and I was like, ooh, ah. But I'm trying to remember, none of them were really side-scrollers. So.
Well,
This is why
I mean,
I'm in silence a lot of times, because I'm absorbing knowledge that I don't know if I ever had before.
well, in truth, I would. Now, different strokes for different folks, as some would say. I definitely will. I'll put it this way. I have no problem with teasing friends on aspects of things. For example, I will tease you, Mariner, for not having some of the knowledge that I have on gaming. But I'm not doing it. I wouldn't do it in a mean spirit. I would do it, jovially, if you will,
Yeah.
and then, I would add in, I would add in. By the way, I have no problem with teaching you, sir, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's kind of why you're here.
Like, I will admit, I do find it kind of surprising that you do not have some knowledge of some things. But again, like I said, not something I would hold against you. He's worthy, sure, but not something I would hold against you because not everybody knows those things. I like Oni, for example. I know a lot about a lot, and a lot of it is not necessarily completely useful. Maybe in some obscure Jeopardy game somewhere it would become useful. But I could sit down and I could give, quick version synopsis of knowledge behind things that are comic book related, or quick, factoids about video game things. I could drop knowledge bits like that real easily, real quickly.
Mojo says she feels like the resident gamer. I'm not gonna argue with that.
Well, I mean, Mojo, you and myself are, I want to say, roughly in the same age bracket. I'm only guessing. I'm only going to pretend I know Mojo's age, which, she's a lady, so she probably will never reveal that.
Actually, she might have accidentally let it slip on one of Raven's streams, but we're not going to delve too deeply into that memory. Savor her blushes.
Do not look too closely behind the curtains. But I believe that we are all roughly, generally in a similar age bracket, and and like I said, that does kind of bring a little bit of a little element of surprise to me that you do not know as much about gaming lore, if you will. Lore.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
She's not gonna save her own blushes. 47 years young and grandma. Or not a grandma.
Oh.
She's not a grandmother, but she says grandma. I'm not sure why. I wouldn't know enough to be a grandparent if I were one. Unless I was extremely proud of my grandbabies.
Well, I will say that I myself am 10 years behind her. I honestly thought that she was closer to our age.
Maybe in maturity.
Which then makes me wonder, where's Gazoo, so that we can, make fun of him for being old, except I don't have any idea how old he is.
I don't know. Maybe he knows that I'm only streaming an hour and streaming a game he's not all that interested in. He could be doing his survival run in Fallout 4. Although
There is
I
that.
thought maybe he completed that. I might be wrong. But yes, of my following, Gazoo definitely. Actually, no. I think it's a toss-up between him and Mr. Q. Mr. Q is also of the elderly.
Ah, yes! Mr. Q. I remember the name, but
He hasn't been online in a while. He usually will watch my streams after the fact, so if you're watching this on playback, Mr. Q, hi! You can leave a comment for how old you actually are, and we can maybe mention it next week. But yeah, those are the old gummers of my particular crowd.
There is that. Trying to program. There you are.
2 years if she remembers quickly, but he is the older. He actually got into Sim Settlements 2 before I did. I just got more.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
I just got more. I was the one to dive deep into the mechanics and start putting up some videos on how to play and stuff like that. And that's how he found me, was on YouTube. And then the rest is, as they say, history.
There we go. Yeah,
So,
and that was a quick lore drop behind Deep Dive Gaming.
Yes.
Exposition. What can I say?
So I guess are there any purely side-scrolling games left, or are they all cross-pollinated across
So,
other genres?
I would say majority of them are. I would say that the majority of them are cross-genre now, but or they have some bits and pieces of side-scrolling. But there was a recent game that came out that is, in fact, going back to the roots of side-scrolling, and that is Super Mario Wonder. I do have that game, by the way. However, I have not gone back to playing it since probably about a week after it came out. But that's not because I didn't like it. It's just because
the good games will come out in clumps. Whichever one comes first is the one that gets the most attention.
Yeah, and in fact, that's kind of how that went. Mario Wonder came out about the same time as Super Mario RPG Remake, which I did like and play, and honestly, that's the last game that I really got deeply into playing a lot, because, well, since then I've kind of been on a personal gaming hiatus, because, well, quite frankly, I think I might have overdone it.
Got yourself too many good games in too short a time.
Oh yeah, and I was. That is just yeah. I'm gonna be completely honest. Baldur's Gate, Armored Core. What else came out? Yeah, Baldur's Gate, Armored Core, Super Mario RPG, and Mario Wonder, and Final Fantasy 16 all kind of dropped around the same time. And I beat Final Fantasy 16, I beat Mario RPG, I even went and beat all the optional super bosses of Mario RPG, which was not part of the original gameplay. And after that, you know, around that same time, I also played Mario Wonder a little bit with my daughter. And I got a little bit of Baldur's Gate 3 in and a little bit of Armored Core 6 in. And about that time, I was like, oh, overload. But
speaking of Baldur's Gate, I'm not actually. I should mention I'm not actually going to be able to play on Lagonaut's channel on Tuesday night. I forgot I had work when I mentioned it earlier this week. So still tune in. I think Soda might be playing, and I'm not sure if he's going to be joined by anyone. I don't know. I don't think he's going to continue our game because I'm the one that's got the save file, but he may do something on his own or with another member of
He could. I will talk to Chieftain and mention that we could possibly potentially be able to bring in Tyrande for it if Soda is not able to. It all depends.
Just don't want to leave our audience without something to watch.
Yep, that's always been a thing that I will give Lagonaut credit for. We've always tried to make sure somebody was there in the case of emergency. Anyways,
once a month I have to do something at work in the evenings. And this month it fell on a Tuesday or Thursday.
Well, Thursday. But at any rate, we will. Yes, yeah.
So you were talking about Mario World or Mario Brothers World? What is it?
It's Super Mario Brothers Wonder. It's the
Wonder, okay.
latest. Yes, it is the latest of the Mario franchise. Um, we've got Mario versus Donkey Kong coming out, which I don't think I would classify as a side scroller. It's more of the arcade style Donkey Kong. There is a game that is exclusively about Princess Peach coming out, but I have no idea what that game is even going to be about or like. So, that being said, Mario Wonder is in fact a side scroller platformer with all of the same mechanics that you had from Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers 3, which are the two OGs of video gaming, if you ask me. They are legendary games, and not just because they're Nintendo, but because of what they brought to gaming that really, in my opinion, revolutionized it. But yeah.
Okay.
That being said,
I just
that
realized
being
I've been
said,
forgetting
it
to share
is.
this game. I share my gaming with you on the Discord, but I assume you're on your phone or something, so doesn't
Yeah,
impact
I
much.
am on my phone, and I do usually watch it there, but today I'm kind of pacing around.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah,
Do you want me to share
I
it
feel
still,
like I
or
kind of.
are we good?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
Um, I feel like I kind of came underprepared, and I'll apologize for that. I thought I had more in my back pocket for side scrollers than I really did.
Okay. Well, we can change the subject since we've covered that one as much as we possibly can. Let's talk about what was another topic we had thought about doing. I'm forgetting now. Shoot, I should be
Shoot.
writing these down.
You know what? Actually, hold off on switching topics because we can actually cover like what was revolutionized from the side scrollers
There we go. Yeah, we can
then
dig into that.
versus
I think.
now,
Yeah,
which
I
is
think
kind of
that's
what
a
I
good
was trying
idea.
to get into.
Yeah. Let's do it. As they
Um,
say.
so so I mean, if you really look at how technology is advanced and what I think that a lot of people skip out on when it comes to advancement is giving a new look at old old presentations, if you will. Because when you've got a side scroller from back in the day, you didn't really you just had 2D animation. You didn't really have what some people call, well, actually no, Chief would be proud of me for dropping this. You didn't really have 2.5D animation. Where it
Yeah.
would blend 3D elements with a 2D graphic rendering. And that's kind of what they really did with modern side scrollers. You got a 3D background in a quote unquote 2D foreground, or you have everything that's fully 3D animated, but it only moves on the horizontal axis versus moving into the background, or it'll have some elements of shifting into the background and shifting into the foreground, but still maintaining its neutral plane. Um, Stop me if I'm going too far one direction when it comes to explanation.
I'm getting a little lost.
Um,
It's easier with examples that we can't bring in the current formats. But
yeah, that's fair. But to really help explain what I'm saying is you have your x axis, which is your horizontal axis, you have your y axis, and then you have your z axis. Your x and your y is your literally your horizontal and your vertical, and then your z is your foreground and background. Follow?
Yes, that I get.
Okay. Okay. That being said, you got your, when I say your foreground and your background, and then I called it neutral ground. I don't know if that's the proper terminology for it, but that's the ground, quote unquote,
Mojo says depth of
between
field.
the four.
Is that
Yeah,
relevant?
you're correct. That's very relevant. Your depth of field is like, if you look in at a game nowadays and you just look across the horizon, let's say Breath of the Wild, for example. Obviously, I'm going to lean on that one.
Yeah.
You look out into the horizon. Your depth of field is how far you can see from where your character stands. Then honestly, you could look at this actually across the generations of gameplay with how far we've advanced with animation technology. Your full 3D games, let's say Mario 64, where everything was rendered in a specific format and only so much stuff was rendered in each world at a time, and you could look out and see for forever, and then if you shoot something or throw something and it keeps traveling, you can see it travel until it hits an invisible wall. You didn't have as much depth of field as you do, say, now, when you advance across the generations of games until Breath of the Wild, and you have miles of depth of field. Now, granted, Breath of the Wild is no longer the bar for achievement when it comes to video game advancement and how, awesome and widely things can be rendered, you know, but I still argue it's a testament to, how much you can push a piece of hardware to do amazing things if you really stick to quality. But hey, what do I know? But if you really look at it, if you really, really look at it, and then you look at these games that are built simply, and I'm going to go to Mario Wonder, I would actually encourage you to check out Mario Wonder when you have the chance. Not to pick up the game, of course, but to like look at the gameplay videos.
Mojo says Red
But
Dead Redemption 2 did a great job with render distance.
well, there you go. I would probably say that Red Dead 2 is probably graphically more intensive than Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. You know what? That's like no contest now that I think about it, because Breath of the Wild came out in, what was it, 2016, 2017? Red Dead 2 came out, I don't remember where it came out first. I think it was PC first. And was definitely designed to push hardware. So, yeah. And yeah, I know we're getting away from the side scroller stuff, but
Mojo says, but you can throw a
I'm
deer across the map if you bounce it off the bridge just right. In 2017. I'm not sure I'm like tracking it.
2017,
I'm not sure.
was that
It's
for
the
Red
part
Dead, or was
that's what I'm
okay?
having trouble tracking, is whether she's referring to Red Dead or Red Dead 2.
Ah, but I promise I'm bringing it back to side scrolling. But if you really look at it, look at those capabilities, and now you incorporate that with, say, um, you incorporate with that the the ability of taking those same elements of, depth of field, and the 3D background rendering and the 3D foreground rendering, You include all of that, and you put that in a side scroller. Like, you can create incredibly beautiful environments with that. And really, Mario Wonder, as simple as it is, because it is literally as simple as, say, the OG 8-bit Mario side scroller. It is that simple. Now, maybe I would go as far back as Super Nintendo instead. But you're taking simple mechanics, jumping on enemies, and jumping on platforms, and jumping across gaps, and you're putting it in an environment that has the complexity of, say, Breath of the Wild. Now I'm being a little, a little hyperbolic here by using that as an example, but you are putting in an environment that is super complex, and it's just it adds a lot to the experience because you're taking, again, a genre of side-scrolling platformer and putting it into a very, very technologically modern environment. Where's the loss?
Yeah.
Where's the negative? Now, I again, I was being hyperbolic. I'm not, maybe not so much 8-bit Mario in this case, but for sure, think about it. Like, it's really that simple. Now you have, again, additional concepts because you have different power-ups, which you probably have more concepts expanded of power-ups from, like, say, Mario 3. You have the concept of storing a power-up as a backup. But again, you could get power-ups in the original Mario Brothers. But you have newer power-ups too, so I don't know. Maybe my concept that I'm pointing at works, maybe it doesn't. My argument still stays the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just want the super simplistic concept. Like, really. The what's that game? Isaac. Something Isaac. Cult of the Lamb. Very simplistic concepts with, in their cases, probably simplistic graphics, but they can do a lot with it,
Yeah.
I think I've run out of things to kind of babble on about. Metroidvanias, I could go there.
Sorry, I'm a little distracted by being run around back and forth on this map trying to get this Palumu. It sent me all the way across the map, and then the creature got up and flew away back the way I came. So I'm like, really? Really?
Yeah, that was one of the things that irritated me about that game. When a monster would run away and it'd run several maps away.
Yeah, I'm almost caught up with it again, though.
Yeah.
Let's see. Trying to think. Now, how would you quantify? Have you seen the games? Let's see. Mojo says I like Don't Starve because it was simplistic but hard as heck. It's a lot like Cult of the Lamb. Oh, he's asleep. Wonder if I could get him. I don't think I can get him. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to capture him because I haven't actually landed a blow yet. There.
There you go.
I was looking at, like, there's some games out there, like Pixel Starship that's for mobile that's got, see, I'm trying to think, it's a 2D environment. I'm, like, I can't remember the name of the stupid titles, but it's like you've got these ships that you map out, that you build out, and then it goes across the screen. Oh no! Here's a let me change tax settings. So, do you remember Galaga? Of course you remember Galaga.
Yes.
Was that, what was that considered? Was that side scroller even though it was more up than sideways? Or was that
that would be retro arcade, and I wouldn't. I think that would be the classification that I would give it, retro arcade, because you've got a couple of different styles of that. Because you have, say, for example, Pac-Man, I would call retro arcade. I would actually think I would even classify Donkey Kong as retro arcade, but you can easily give that the classification of platformer. So that would probably be more of a retro platformer. Galaga, so retro arcade. You have Snake, retro arcade. What was it? Space Invaders, retro arcade. Missile Command, retro arcade.
Yeah,
I'm really reaching deep.
I've seen a lot of games like for mobile that are like half of it's builder, but it's like in the 2D environment, and then it's like it's got elements where like if you're traveling through space, it's just centered on the ship and things go by behind it. But it isn't really side scroll, I don't think, because it would go. It would be more like arcade at that point because you're just trying to like dodge things or shoot things or survive.
Yeah.
It's a lot of that sort of thing. So I'm racking my brain.
1992.
I'm just racking my brain trying to think of games that I've seen that might or might not be considered side scroller.
That's fair. We're kind of. Yeah, there was quite a few. There was. Now, here we go. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. I honestly, I don't know if I'd really expect you to know this one because it was a niche game, even for the N64. There was a game that came out shortly after the launch of the N64 called The Mystical Ninja. It was a very Mario platformer, kind of a Mario clone, like Mario 64, but you weren't really platforming. Your job wasn't really to jump across obstacles. It was more of an action RPG, even for back in that era of video game. But the sequel came out after that, and the sequel was a side scroller action game. And I never finished that game because it was an immediate turnoff from the story beats of the original to me. Like I wanted a 3D action RPG that it had in the original, but it switched to a 3D side scroller, and it was more of a platformer. I didn't care for it, and it was at the time it was just an immediate turnoff for me. So, womp womp.
I haven't seen many games do that to me. That it's one type of game, and then it turns into a different type of game. I mean, Fallout's an example of what that would look like because 1 and 2 were like very different from 3 and 4 in New Vegas, but I never played 1 and 2.
Yeah. Neither had I.
I've seen gameplay of it.
But
like Oxhorn did a series for each of them covering the story of those games.
Ooh, is that the guy that like did a real super deep dive into the lore of each game?
Uh-huh. I've actually watched a few channels that dig really deep into the lore. We're off topic again, but
Trying to
okay.
remember.
Stream of consciousness, people.
There.
But yeah, he's probably my source for, like I used him as a source when I did my Who is the Big Bad of Simpsons 2. Big Bad Theory was the name of the video. Because, I mean, he got into the story of Nick Valentine and Dima, and I used that
Ah.
information for one of my fan theory hypotheses for who the big bad was in Sim Elements 2. But I think he's done all of them at this point. In fact, he might even be doing a second run through Fallout 4. Because I thought he'd done a full lore deep dive previously, but I'm looking at what he's done now, and I'm like, we're doing now, and it's like, have you not done this before? So I gotta go back and look and see. There's a cigar, bowler hat, that's him. But
Yep.
it would be interesting. I don't know. I don't think I would be sold on it per se if it were to come up, but if there were to be a side-scroller version or a platformer version based on Fallout universe, depending on how they do it, I might give it a try, but it's definitely different from what I usually go for. So, like, even going from
That's fair.
Fallout to Fallout Shelter on mobile. It's on everything now, but it was on
I was
mobile
gonna
for a while.
say.
It's like that one only holds my interest after for the first hour. Like I'll start building things, and then I'll get bored and I'll move on because there's no story. And they made that game very complex. So it's no.
Yeah,
longer
they
a
might
mobile
have.
game. They went ham on all the different things, bringing in all the different lore from the game.
I was gonna say if they're still running that game and still adding on to that game, they had to have gone really deep into what you could do in Fallout Shelter. Because that was actually an example I was about to throw at you. Like there are certain things where that game, or where a game in the Fallout universe just spins off to something else that it probably wouldn't do well if it becomes part of the main lore. Like, in order to get the main lore for the overarching story, you have to play this side game to get it all. That would lose me because, for example, I'm going to talk about, say, now I'm bleeding into other forms of entertainment by doing this. Take Star Wars, for example. With a lot of the stuff that Disney has done since they got the franchise, in order to get the full story of what happened in the sequel trilogy, you had to play some games and you had to read some comics, as well as watch the movies.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know, for example, you don't know where the First Order comes from, what Kylo Ren's backstory is. You barely learn anything about his backstory just watching the movies, but in order to get the full understanding, you have to read some comics. You have to read the comic that follows him and his fall from the light side to the dark side, in order to understand that his name's not actually Kylo Ren. In fact, he adopted the name of an actual Sith that he killed. And you get the story of how his lightsaber has a cross hilt because when he went and made the hilt, or made the sword, and he corrupted the kyber crystal, it split. Like, you don't learn that unless you read the comics.
Yeah, and then they tried to turn it into a whole thing in Jedi Survivor where it's actually like a great sword or broadsword idea, which I kind of bought, kind of didn't. Like, I was like, that's kind of cool and all, but the lightsaber technically is OP anyways. You don't need to make it even more OP than it started out being.
You're right. But, changing game types turns me off in some cases, and I'm okay in other cases. Great example, Mass Effect, Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3. Which one are you in now?
I'm in 2 right now.
Okay, great example. Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2. Did you notice how the environments are a lot smaller?
Oh yes. That's been getting lost a lot more successfully in Mass Effect 2. Like, I don't know what it is with that, with the maps in that game. They're so confusing. And it's, part of it I think is that because I'm being guided through, I'm not learning the maps as easily as if I were to be playing it on my own. The other part of it
Yes.
is just, the other part of it is just, they're definitely more alien.
Yeah, well, the maps in 2, believe it or not,
Even with the
I mean, you
navigator,
said
he
you're...
gets lost. I get lost.
The maps in Mass Effect 2 are significantly smaller than the maps in Mass Effect 1. And the maps in Mass Effect 1 are a lot more procedurally generated. So the planets that you could visit in 1, all across the galaxy, they're cookie cutter. There's always at least one anomaly to investigate in Mass Effect 1. And there's always one of 2 types of encounters. Whereas in Mass Effect 2, it's a lot more randomly generated. And overall, the maps are smaller. The example this is kind of an example, and I think it's a poor example to make my point. Like, game format changes in some cases are bad. In others, they're good. In others still, they're a trade-off. In Mass Effect 1, you have a lot bigger environment you can explore, but everything, I say everything kind of, as a throwaway line, but it's all very procedurally generated. There's a rule that it follows, blah, blah, blah. Mass Effect 2, you get the pleasure of some more randomly generated environments, but the maps are a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Did I make my point right?
Yeah, some of the missions I go on, all I have to do is land, and then I get the button that says, "Congratulations, you finished the mission." I'm like, "What? I haven't done anything." Like the other day, we were doing like Mojo's like, as soon as you land, just stay up on that platform and shoot your rocket, get your missile launcher, and then take out these 3 mechs. And then as soon as I did that, it was like, ta-da! I'm like, really? So I guess I'll go loot and then take off. Mojo says, I think MA3, we actually got the whole of the world building and fighting mechanic ironed out too. By then they figured
Yes
out
and no.
everything.
Yes and no, because I still have the complaint of the I still felt like in Mass Effect 3 that it was that a lot of the areas, a lot of the zones are even smaller than they are in Mass Effect 2. But I would agree that they got the world building ironed out very well in that one. It's just the beggars can't be choosers, I guess.
I'm beginning to wonder if I'm going to be able to defeat this guy before the end of the stream. May have to run a few minutes long, and then I'll have to hustle after I'm done.
Perhaps.
My group is meeting tonight, and they know I'm a streamer, so they'll understand if I'm a little bit behind.
What? That's
Says They
okay.
did make them smaller, but they filled them out more, too, is what Mojo says.
And I can't find anything wrong with that statement.
That's it. What was that doing?
I would like to hear the announcement that there are going to be more, or that a new Mass Effect is in development. However, I also am scared of that announcement.
Yeah, gaming is not the escape it once was, but we'll not get into that topic.
I agree.
I mean, actually, I'm known enough. I probably could and get away with it, but that's a whole can of worms that we don't have time to get into. We'll be here for another 5 hours.
Well, I mean, if We could. I'm not afraid to say that I heard today that they officially canceled the Deus Ex game that they were working on, that Embracer Group was working on. Because, well, I'm not afraid to say it because the fact that with everything that came out of Embracer Group over the last couple of years, the fact that they bought over 36 studios in the last, I think it was like 4 or 5 years, and the mess that Saints Row was, the mess that Marvel, what was it, Marvel Avengers was, all that stuff just kind of pointed to whatever they were working on with Deus Ex was not good. In fact, the voice actor for the main character of Deus Ex came out and said, yeah, they've been working on it in pre-production for like 2 years, and they hadn't contacted him to be the voice actor for the character. The only thing he could think of is that they were not working on a story following the original main character at that point. So, yeah, whatever they were doing, it couldn't have been good.
Oh. Let's see.
Talk about a stream of consciousness.
Yeah, well, that's why we called it the way we did. We knew we were a bunch of people who just can't seem to focus on the topic. Or we don't have enough time to, like, really... This is, yeah.
I don't... There's not too... Well, I gotta be careful how I word this. There's not a lot that I feel like I could say more about side-scrollers. There's plenty out there, but they're very simplistic and very genius in some of the simplicity that they are. Side-scrollers are not my favorite genre, but then again, I'm a lore junkie. You give me a game with lots of lore in it, and you're gonna have me hooked.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll make that next week's topic. Is games with fantastic lore. Or games with lore,
Lord.
and then we'll pick the ones that are fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be very subjective. Like, I could sit down and say something like, lore of Five Nights at Freddy is very extensive, very fantastic. Not a game that I care to play. I would get bored 5 minutes in.
Mojo is the same as you, she says, with games with lore. I must admit, I like good lore. I was really invested in the World of Warcraft lore back when that game was more popular than it is now. Like, World of Warcraft was not my first introduction to Warcraft. Whoops, that was a miss. I actually played Warcraft. I started with Warcraft 2. I somehow missed Warcraft 3, and then World of Warcraft came out, and I'm getting introduced to all these new character types, and I'm like, I've missed something. So I went to their website and read up on the lore, and oh my gosh, there was so much, and I'm like, I want, and I was buying World of Warcraft books for a long time.
I'll tell you what. Yes, let's make that a topic.
Okay.
Because if you want to get into something like Warcraft, or, well, if you want to talk about lore, lore is what makes and breaks games for me. Lore
could you drop
broke
that into
World
the
of
Big
Warcraft.
Geek for me? I'll hopefully remember in the next 5 minutes, but just in case I don't.
Yeah, but yeah, lore is what broke World of Warcraft for me.
Broke or
But
made World of Warcraft?
yes, broke.
Okay. Well, we can get into that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, we will get into that discussion when we talk about it because there's plenty to share.
so if you could say,
And
well, if you could jump into Big Geek thread on my Discord server and just put a note in there, lore heavy or lore topics, lore games, something that anyone to help us remember that we've just pretty much decided.
Lore
we should
and
stop.
gaming.
Lore and gaming, yes. It looks like this fight may take a little longer than I want. I was hoping he'd be more damaged and maybe we could capture him by now, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. I'm going to have to finish this fight off screen. Go ahead, fly away. Oh no. I can't pause this game. It's one drawback of Fallout of Mass Effect. Man, I'm all sorts of
Yes.
now. Monster hunter.
Discombobulation.
We didn't say it was going to be a clear stream of consciousness. But
This is Stream of Consciousness Lore Edition.
yes, there we go. Wahaha. Oh no, we got 50 after in here now. That's going to make things hard. I don't want to abandon the expedition. I've expended a lot of resources on this fight. But I did also study.
Oh.
I don't know what
Yeah.
the time limit is on this. I may only have 10 minutes left on this particular feature. Because these hunts usually have a time limit on them. Usually 15 minutes, but some of them can be shorter. Whoops.
I remember that.
Really?
Ooh.
Oh, he's got a thing. I'm getting beat up. Okay, there we go. Now he's leaving. So we'll hide
Uh-oh.
Tsuchiyaku. And while we're hiding, we will say goodnight. So, tomorrow night, Starfield for science. And then I'll be gone until next Sunday. There's a slight possibility I will be late to streaming tomorrow night because I have to travel. But I should be back with plenty of time. I'll drop something in the Discord if I'm not. Hiro, you want to plug Like It really quick?
Yes. Every Friday night, 7 Central, 8 Eastern, we are on Lagging Out Podcast. We always talk about quirky stuff. Lately, we've been focused more on gaming, or at least trying to. We do take on, entertainment and talk about entertainment topics. We try to be funny. Some people love us, some people don't. But there's a little bit of something for everybody on our streams.
Indeed. So, I will say goodnight, Hiro.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night, everyone. Until tomorrow night, enjoy Monster Hunter World and gaming of all types. Fair winds and fun gaming, y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye.